Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Summit Living and Loving Beyond Addiction. I'm your hostess, Mavis Curry, and I have the privilege to have with me here today is Candace Plattor. And Candace has more than 25 years in a practice as a practice therapist on addiction, and particularly specializing in family addiction therapy. She is also the author of the book, Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. And when I opened the book up and started looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, we all have to read it. There is no one out there that's not affected by addiction. And I myself discovered that I was actually in denial of some of my own addictions. So understanding and moving to a place that we can all support each other and really move in this world in a way that's healing and whole. And Candace has done some amazing work in that area and simplifying the things that you can do. So Candace, can you tell us a little bit about how you moved into this and ultimately how you got into writing this wonderful book?
Yeah, I'd love to. Hi, everyone. You can see me, right? Everybody can see us both. Is that how this works?
Yes,
okay.
That's right.
Okay. So I think the relevant part of my story starts in the early 70s when I was in my 20s and I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Unfortunately, many people know of this disease because there's a lot more people who have it, unfortunately. It's an inflammatory bowel disease. For those of you who don't know it, it's like colitis or something like that. But when they diagnosed me with it, I just became really sick very quickly, and I had no idea. I thought I had food poisoning that just wouldn't go away. They didn't know, the doctors did not know what to do for me. They basically had no idea. It was the new kid on the block disease. And so what they did is they threw medication at it, and they gave me a lot of meds. And they gave me Valium as much as I wanted. They gave me codeine as much as I wanted. They gave me other oxys and other kinds of drugs like that. And I think they just wanted to try to appease this young woman who kept coming into their office in tears, all upset and feeling really awful. And addiction was not on the radar back then. It's certainly not the way it was now. I don't think they had any idea what they were unleashing upon me. Unfortunately, doctors today do have an idea of that, and they continue to prescribe these drugs, but don't get me started. Anyway, so I very faithfully took all of these medications for months and months and years, and I also rediscovered pot, which helped the symptoms a lot, but it's addictive, people. If it's got THC in it, it's addictive. So if you fast forward 15 years, I was an absolute mess. And all of those substances are depressants in the system. So I was so depressed that I was suicidal, and I had no idea what was going on for me. And that's when I reached out for help and started to go to 12-step programs, which were the only actual recovery program at that point. And, you know, it basically saved my life. And one day at a time, I'm coming up to 31 years clean and sober in July. So it's just been an amazing journey, but I still do have Crohn's. It's one of those incurable diseases, but I'm much, much better because I take care of myself. I care about how I feel. It matters to me now, and I'm not suicidal or depressed.
Well, that's great.
Yes.
You know, that road to addiction is oftentimes invisible. We don't see it happening.
Yeah.
And like I said, I just recognize myself, and oftentimes it's not one, it's many. And the things that we do that we affect everyone in that. In your book, you talk about the 10 tips for survival in loving someone with addiction. And that's, relationships is so critical, and it really becomes a major challenge for those of us that get to that place where we're not sure if anybody loves us anymore.
Well, and we don't love ourselves either. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. We don't love and
Yeah.
respect ourselves when we get to that place. Yeah.
So talk to us about I know we don't have enough time to go through all the 10 tips, but what are the most important ones that you can share with our viewers to give them a feel for what's in your book, and also what you practice and how you help families in moving with and really learning to love again?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, relationships are so important, and the kind of support we receive is so important. And unfortunately, because there isn't enough help for the loved ones, for the family members, they're often doing the wrong things that aren't actually helping, but things that are enabling, right? We'll talk about that more. And it's not because they're bad people, and it's not because they want to hurt the addict that they love. They just don't know what else to do. And by the time somebody comes to me, usually they're pretty much at the end of their rope. They've tried everything and nothing has worked. They get to me, it starts to work, right? So my book, this is my book. Can people see this?
Yep, you see it good.
Yeah. And it has a butterfly and the shadow of a butterfly. We're going to maybe talk about butterflies at the end here. And the blue butterfly hopefully signifies the loved one after reading this book. And the shadow is the addict. But before that happens, it's usually the other way around. Because what loved ones do is they put all their attention on the addict they love. Understandable, but it's not a good idea. So of the 10 tips, for me, there are 3. I think all 10 are important.
Yep.
I think there are 3 that stand out more than any others. So I can talk about those today.
Okay.
The first one, I don't know if any of you have books. Some of you would have my book, I think. But the first tip that I think is the most important is tip number 3. Why am I not finding it easily? Tip number 3, which says, you cannot control or fix another person, so stop trying. Most people try for years to fix the addict. It doesn't work. The addict needs to want to change before change is going to happen. So this book and the work that I do get addicts ready to want that change. Because usually at the beginning, they're not that ready to do much different than they're already doing. So in the book, I have a quote for each tip. And this one is my favorite one of all. So I'm just going to read it to you. It's by Robert Heinlein, who wrote Stranger in a Strange Land. I always felt like a stranger in a strange land. It was one of my favorite books. He's a science fiction writer. If you haven't read that book, you might want to. So he says, never try to teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and it annoys the pig.
I remember that one.
So I'm not saying that addicts are pigs. I'm an addict. I'm not saying that, but I just really love this quote, and I think it's appropriate for this tip. So many people believe, we're actually taught to believe in our society that we can change somebody else, that if we try hard enough, we can change somebody else, and if we can't change them, then we're a failure. And the truth of the matter is that the only person we can change is sitting on our butt. There is nobody else that we can change. I talk a lot about the Serenity Prayer in my book. Grant me the serenity, the peace, the calm, most people who are loved ones of an addict don't have that in their lives. To accept the things I cannot change. There's a lot of things we can't change. We can't change the weather. We can't change the addict. We can't change anything other than us. So the courage to change the things we can, which is us, and the wisdom, I think this is the most important part, to know the difference. Because if we don't have the wisdom to know the difference between what we can change and what we can't change, we keep trying to change what we can't change, and it doesn't work. So that, to me, is like the underlying premise of everything that I do in terms of the work that I do with loved ones.
Well, and it feels like, I know I happen to be one of those individuals that tried to fix everything and try to control everything, and and it becomes the greatest source of contention and separator in the relationship. To, even though I know and I feel I'm doing what's for the highest good for everybody, it's not for the highest good if everybody's running the other way. They're not connected. They're not there.
Well, the other thing that trying to control everything does for us, because me too, it keeps us very busy. And basically what we're doing is we're addicted to the addict's addiction. It takes up the whole life. It takes up, that's what we think about. It's what we talk about. It's what we wake up thinking about at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it keeps us very busy. So we have our own addiction here when we're a loved one of somebody with an addiction, and we need to get past that. It doesn't work.
I know in your book you also asked what's the most important question, or the magic question, I think you call it. It's kind of related. Yeah. It's related to that, right?
Yeah.
What would you give up?
Well, it's what would my life be like?
That's right.
If I didn't have this situation. And most people will say, oh, my life would be just wonderful. Some people are honest enough to say, I really wouldn't know what to do with myself because I'm so invested in this, right? And it's not that I don't want the addict I love to change, because I do, but if they get healthier, then what do I do with my life? And when people can be that honest, there are so many changes that can be made, and lives just change so rapidly. It's wonderful.
So are there things that you can do to help them see themselves? Because this is kind of a standard, I'll call it, I teach in direct metaphysics, is kind of that base fundamental question of how to see yourself. And to see yourself honestly and truthfully. I think one of the other documents that you have, the first thing of outsmarting addiction, is getting real with yourself.
Getting real with yourself. And it's the first tip as well in the book. And if you're reading my book, you can read whatever tip you want to start with. I mean, you can bounce around. It doesn't have to be in order. But the first tip is come face to face with reality, because if you're not seeing what is, and if you're not seeing your own part in this, if you're the loved one of an addict, the chances are that you haven't gotten the help you need, because there's so little of it out there, that you haven't gotten the help you need, and that you're doing things that are contributing to the addiction continuing, which is, I know, the last thing you want to be doing. Right?
And it's out of ignorance. Let's say, and don't attribute to malice what can be explained by ignorance. I mean, I even recently, knowing some of the things that I know, I got engaged in some with an individual that I fell back down into the hole. It's very easy to move into that space that's not contributing to either's health or good.
It certainly is, and it's easy as a therapist too to get into that space of working harder than your clients will work. I won't work harder than anybody else will work. If you meet me halfway, I'm happy to be there with you, but I'm not going to do your work for you, because it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody gets healthy that way.
So how do you help the client and even the individual that has the family member that's addictive to stand back? especially the family member, because it's, especially if it's a child, it's so heartbreaking. It's like you got to let them learn their lesson.
And you do. Yeah, it is heartbreaking. And it's hardest, I think, for parents who have children, adult children who are addicted. It's really hard also to be the child of somebody with an addiction. It's hard to be the partner or spouse. It's hard to be the friend. I don't really want to say who has the most sorrow in this, because I think everybody does have their own sorrow, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some comparing going on in the process too.
Yeah, and you know, and that's a big way that people stay in denial, by the way, is they say, oh, well, my situation isn't as bad as so-and-so or such and such, or they go into a self-help group meeting and they say, well, I'm not like those people. And so it keeps you away from the help that you need, right? So I think the major thing that I do after teaching them that they can't control anybody but themselves is I help them see the difference between helping and enabling. And that's the second of the 3 tips that I was going to talk about today. So we need to learn the difference between helping and enabling. And so I have really short, quick definitions for that. Enabling behavior is one that keeps the addiction going. For example, giving money to an addict. You know where that money's going to go. Oh, Mom, I just need $20. I just need to get some groceries. Well, if that person is really in active addiction, the chances are that they're not going to go buy groceries with that $20. And so instead of doing something like that, you could take them shopping or buy them some groceries and give them the groceries, but you don't do that too often, and don't give them money, right? Because money keeps the addiction going. So a helping behavior is a behavior that assists the addiction to stop. Like, I'm not going to rescue you. I'm not going to pay your rent if you're spending every dime you have on drugs or whatever the addiction is. I'm not going to rescue you. You need to be feeling the consequences of the action. If you don't, how are you going to learn? How are things going to shift for you? So the basic message here that people can give to their addicted loved ones. And a lot of people tell me that, you know, I sound like I'm preaching tough love, and I am, because tough love is love. And sometimes it's the healthiest love you can give someone. So to be able to say to somebody, I love you, I love you so much. I love you so much that I'm not willing to continue to enable you in this addiction, because I'm understanding now, I'm starting to get that this isn't healthy for you. Enabling is never a loving act for an addict. How could it be? How is giving somebody money or something like that they're going to spend on the addiction a loving act toward the addict? It can't be, right? So to be able to say to your addict, I love you so much that I'm going to stop enabling you, and maybe even make an amend. I'm sorry that I've been doing that. I see now how this hasn't been good for you. So when you, if you need to continue to be in your addiction, then you're going to need to do it somewhere else. But when you're ready for help, when you're really ready, come back and talk to me, because I love you and I will help you and I will do what I can. When you're really ready, I will meet you halfway.
And I'm doing this. Go ahead.
And I'm doing this because I love you, not because I don't love you.
So in that, my sister, there's just been a lot of addicts in my family, and my sister had to have that conversation with her son. And the truth is that's a fundamental conversation and thought form that as a good parent we should hold anyway. Um,
Agreed.
when the individual, you said earlier you helped individuals get ready for and to move into letting go of whatever it is they've become attached to, addicted to.
Would you like me to talk about that a little bit?
Please, would you?
Yeah. If you've been enabling an addict, you've been making it cushy for that addict. You've been rescuing them. You've been doing everything you can to make things okay for them. It's taken over your life. It's become your codependent addiction. And it has not helped the addict because the addict just continues to be in the addiction. So let's say you've got somebody who's allowed, let's say you've got an adult child, somebody who's allowed to live in the family home, who's allowed to drink in the family home, maybe even bring illegal drugs into the home. I see that a lot. They don't have to contribute financially. They're not expected to. The bar is set very low for them. So they're not expected to contribute financially. They're not being held accountable for even washing their own dishes. They've got a cushy bed and a cushy shower and probably a washer dryer, and maybe mom even does the laundry for them. And it goes on and on and on. When you've got a situation like that, why should an addict change anything?
I kind of like to have somebody doing all that for me.
Exactly. And you can be high all the time and not have to face life, right? Yeah. So it's not a good situation. On paper, the addict has it made, but we all know that addiction is not a great lifestyle to have. And at some point, the addict, every single addict that I've ever known, including me, at some point we get to a place where we look at our lives and we go, my life is a mess. Mm-hmm. That's our choice point. To me, addiction is a choice more than it's anything else. It's not that we choose to become addicts. I don't think anybody chooses that. But when we see what we're doing to ourselves, then we have a choice to make. We're either going to stay in active addiction or we're going to go into some kind of active recovery. But when an addict is being enabled and everything is cushy and everything is done for them, and not only that, but some of them get to punch holes in walls and some of them get to yell at people and call them terrible names. Some of them get to actually physically shove people around and still be allowed to live in the family home. Other children watch that happen. Other children in the family watch that happen. Everybody is suffering. Everybody's affected. Everybody needs to heal from this. The way to get an addict ready is to say, we're no longer going to do this for you. We love you enough to stop doing this for you. We're not saying you have to leave. You don't have to leave, but we're going to raise the bar for you. And we have expectations now and some boundaries for you. You're not allowed to punch any holes in the walls. You're not allowed to bring illegal substances into this house. You're not allowed to call us terrible names. You have to go and you're not allowed to sleep all day and party all night if you live here. You need to go and get a job and you need to contribute to the household if you're going to live here. That's what we expect from you. And we expect it soon. So, what we want is for you to be up and out of the house by 9:30 every morning looking for work. You don't come back till 4:30. That's your job, is to look for a job. And you start getting them ready to participate in life as life is instead of doing what you were doing before. And most people, if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, well, how do I do that? I mean, how do I even say to my addict? Yeah. So you work with somebody like me. You work with somebody who knows how to work with the loved ones to help you know what your boundaries are, how to language them, how to maintain them when the going gets rough. Very important stuff. Otherwise, addiction is a progressive condition. It progresses. It gets progressively worse. It doesn't get better on its own in most cases. So we need to stop it in its tracks and figure out how to deal with this and what boundaries to set and what you want to do and how you want to do it, because a year from now, it'll be worse than it is now. 5 years from now, the addict you love could be dead. And especially with things like fentanyl, we need to be much more careful. So, does that make sense?
It does. And I think that's one of the things that we all understand and know we need is whenever we're moving through anything difficult is support. Someone that has had some experience, someone that has worked in and actually aided others in moving through it, whether it's comes in many sources. Now, there's all kinds of addictions. What's different about the kind of support and advice you'd give somebody that has an alcohol versus a drug versus a eating versus how does that move? Because it sounds like tough love kind of has to be there at the core in all of those. What's different, or what other things would you say you would be working with a client differently within the scope of addictions that's possible that they could be dealing with?
Yeah. To me, addiction is addiction is addiction. Mm-hmm. It's what's under the addiction that matters. We have to get underneath to find out why we're shooting ourselves in the foot as addicts, why we're shooting ourselves in the foot as loved ones. We need to get underneath the addiction. But you raise a very good point. And that is that when somebody's using mind-altering substances, we need to have that person stabilized before, I wouldn't say to somebody that's high, we're raising the bar for you and we're not going to enable you anymore. They're going to just be like, oh,
Probably won't remember the conversation the next day.
It's kind of like the Charlie Brown cartoons on television where the kids all have a voice, but the adults all sound like wow, 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 wow.
Yeah.
And that's what we sound like to addicts who are high or who don't want to hear us, and we need to understand that. So we need to learn how to actually talk and, how to language things and also how to maintain the boundaries and not give in. So with mind-altering substances, there needs to be some physical stabilization before I will work really deeply with somebody. But, it doesn't matter what the addiction is. I've been working with a family where the son is a spending addict, and he likes to buy things. And the parents are usually paying for this because he doesn't have an income. So he buys and buys and buys, and when he's not allowed to buy, he feels like he's empty inside and he feels suicidal. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of ways that people can die from addiction.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I work with what's underneath that. What is that emptiness about? How do we fill up that emptiness in a different kind of way?
So is there particular tools and techniques that you use to help discern the underlying issue? Actually, is what you're talking about, is how do I get to that place? And it's helpful for everybody to know, because that's where I think that's where that I can contribute to it. I didn't cause it.
And parents don't cause it. They don't cause it to happen, but they do contribute to it, or loved ones contribute to it. If they're enabling, they're contributing to it, continuing. And it's a really important thing for loved ones to be able to wrap their heads around, because they're just trying to help. They just want to help. They just want to do whatever they can, and they don't see often that what they're doing is detrimental. Okay, you asked me a question and I lost my train of thought.
How do you help
techniques
them to the underlying cause?
Yeah. I have a lot of bags of tricks, and we go back into the past in terms of anything that's problematic in the present. I don't go into the past and just wallow around in the past, because I don't think that that's very productive. Personally and professionally, I don't see that as productive. But if there's something that's impacting your life today, we need to go and find what that was about and start to heal that. So, for people who have had some abuse in their lives, I often do some inner child work, and we heal that, and people start to learn how to reparent themselves. There's all kinds of ways. There's EMDR, which is a bilateral stimulation of the brain, which has been very successful with addiction. There's a number of techniques that I use depending on what's going on, but I think the most important thing is we've got to change what the loved ones are doing. If what they're doing isn't working, that good old Dr. Phil question, not that I'm a great fan of Dr. Phil, but every once in a while he says something that's useful. And what he says is, has that been working for you?
Yeah.
So when he says that, I ask that question to people, and they generally say, if they're with me, they generally say not very well, because otherwise they wouldn't be with me. And if the answer to the question is not very well, then the next question has to be, are you willing to try something different? And it's going to mean you coming out of your comfort zone too, loved one. And sometimes it's the loved ones that need to come out of their comfort zone first, because an addict isn't going to go to their parents or their spouse or, and say, would you please set some healthy boundaries for me? I mean, addicts don't do that. They manipulate to get what they want when they want it, which is right now or yesterday.
Yeah, I've seen the statistics of the recovery rate for the ones that do have families actively engaged, loved ones actively engaged, and informed. And I think that's what your emphasis is. Get informed. Make sure you know that you're really dealing with an addiction here. And that's the $1 million question sometimes of, is it really an addiction? How do you know it's really an addiction? Oh, Johnny's really not addicted. He's just really tired, and that's how
it's a phase. It's a phase. And sometimes it is a phase, and sometimes people pass through those phases, of course. The way that I see it in terms of the difference between an addiction or a habit is that an addiction really interferes with your life. It really interferes with your life. It causes terrible problems in your relationships, in your job, in your activities of daily living. It puts your life at risk in some cases, many cases. So, if you're a nail biter and that's a habit, unless you bite your nails down to your knuckles, it's not going to be an issue. Right? So an addiction is something that really changes the fabric of what it is that you're dealing with here.
Okay.
And it affects your self-respect as well. And if I could just say, self-respect, to me, self-respect and self-esteem are different things. Self-esteem is from the outside in. It would be you saying to me, oh, Candace, you're such a wonderful person. I love you so much. You're so great, right? From the outside in. But self-respect is how I really feel about myself at 3:00 in the morning. So self-respect is from the inside out. And I believe that self-respect is the most important thing we either have or don't have, and we need to have it. Addicts don't have it. Many loved ones don't have it either until they start doing the right things and feel proud of themselves.
That's interesting. So I know that you also, and actually sitting behind you is this beautiful butterfly.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. And I know you had a message you wanted to deliver around the butterfly, and we're moving down to the last segment of this space, which I know you have so much to offer, and a lot of it's captured in that book.
Thank you.
I think that's a good starting place.
Yeah.
Like you say, we need to make those connections and get that help. What about the butterfly? You have it on your book. You've got it behind you. What about the butterfly?
The butterfly is, I guess I said it to you earlier, it's my adopted totem. It's what, you know, it's not just because butterflies are beautiful, but they are. They're beautiful. It's because butterflies start out as caterpillars, and they crawl along the ground, and little boys like to squish them and step on them, and little girls like to, ew, a caterpillar, you know, and and teachers dissect them in biology class. I mean, the caterpillar does not get much respect. But the caterpillar has an instinct, and it knows that if it doesn't change, it's going to die. So, excuse me, it hangs itself upside down from a tree. It creates this bag of bug juice, and it sits in its own bug juice, and essentially changes its entire DNA. And as soon as it's ready, it comes out as this amazingly delicate but strong creature, and so different from a caterpillar. And nobody says, ew, a butterfly. People say, oh, wow, a butterfly. Mm-hmm. But the change process that caterpillars have to go through to become butterflies, I get that. Mm-hmm. I was a caterpillar. I will not allow myself ever to be a caterpillar again. I am a butterfly most days. I am a butterfly. And I believe that every single person has butterfly potential. No question. Do you want it badly enough? Because you can have it. You can feel good about yourself. You can actually help your addicted loved ones. You can stop addiction in its tracks if you stop enabling.
That's a beautiful, beautiful analogy there. And I personally, I told you, I love butterflies. I too have butterflies all over my place. And I was very excited because we were killing them for a while there. We were getting rid of thistles and all the things that were really their food. So, and I think in a way, the whole movement in addiction and the continued expansion in addiction is actually indicative of kind of what we did to butterflies too. I mean, there's an analogy there. And I think part of it is all of us learning, getting informed, being willing to change, because as you said earlier, that movement and that change, everybody has to change.
Yep.
And everybody gets that chance.
And I live in Canada. Our government is different from the government in the States, but it's also the same in many ways. And much funding has been cut from treatment, education, prevention. We don't have enough detox beds. We don't have enough treatment beds. I know you don't have them there either. Mm-hmm. So it becomes incumbent upon us to learn what to do that actually works, because it does. And I believe that if this addicted society could stop enabling, we could stop addiction. I know that. Yeah.
I hear you. And that's actually the motivation of this, is just to continue a journey of possibilities and helping people see, and whatever resonates with them that's mm-hmm. being offered, because there's a lots of possibilities, mm-hmm. and that individual has to really find the one that resonates and be ready. As you said, be ready.
Get ready. Get ready to be ready. Yeah. Can I say one more thing before we
go?
Sure,
absolutely.
Okay. I feel like I am living proof that addicts can change, because most people would not have wanted to know me 30 years ago. I was a mess. I am living proof of this. It can happen, and it can happen to the addict that you love. When I wrote my book, I didn't know that it was going to be as successful as it's been. It's used in treatment centers now for families. It's, it's won awards. It's, for this addict in recovery, but this addict, I've done something that actually has helped the world. It never, ever occurred to me that I could ever do anything that would help anybody else. So please, please don't give up. If you're a loved one, if you're an addict, don't give up. Reach out, get some help. We're here for you as best we can be. And we all want to see you succeed.
Excellent. And speaking to getting help, I know, Candace, you've got a website and you've got some things that you wanted to offer the individuals. How can they reach you as part of that network of assistance to move and move into that change?
Yeah, there's what I do is I give 60-minute free telephone consultations to loved ones who fill out a questionnaire of mine. You need to fill out a questionnaire. It's fairly brief, but and I see whether what you're dealing with is a fit for me. And if it does seem that way, then I will give you a free 60-minute consultation with me by phone. And if you decide that you want to work with me, if we decide we want to work together, then I have a 6-month program and a year-long program that I work with families in. And I've put this together because if you send an addict to treatment, to rehab, we call it treatment, you call it rehab, for like 30 days to a reputable treatment center, you're spending $50,000. And they don't work with the family very much, if at all, not much. So the addict might go to a place like that and really make some good changes and then come back into a family that's still dysfunctional because nobody's worked with them.
Yep. Yeah.
And they relapse and the family says, but we spent so much money. And so what I do is I work with everybody. I start with the willing participants, but I work with the whole family, and I work with the addict as soon as the addict is ready for me. Yeah. And when the addicts know that I'm an addict and there's not going to be a lot of shame there, they get ready usually pretty quickly. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And also, if they go to your site, they get an opportunity to get a sample, a taste of this wonderful book. So
yes, you can sign up for my newsletter and get a free chapter. And you can also get the 7 ways to outsmart your addiction, which you can give to your addict when the addict is ready. Otherwise, it's just going to be wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we're at the end of our time. And Candace, thank you so much for sharing yourself. Thank you for sharing and creating that wonderful book. And thank you for the encouragement of letting people know you can create, and that creation can have huge influences.
Really. And can I just tell people too about the workbook that goes it goes with the book. So if you're a loved one and you'd like to start working on yourself and see where this started, go into that emptiness, answer some questions, the workbook would be a good idea.
Excellent. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we much appreciate this. And for everyone out there, thank you so much for taking the time to see what's possible. Take the time and invest in yourself. That's always the first step. And we all are on that journey. And so I hope that you will continue to move forward, and everyone love and support and look for these wonderful resources that are out here.
And maybe I'll hear from some of the people who are listening.
Yes, that'd be great. All right, so we're going to wrap this up, and everyone, I appreciate your time. And again, please stay connected, and we'll look to seeing you on the other side of your dreams.